I'm going to take off these fancy heels because part of what I talk about is the barefoot boardroom, and what that means is when I started my construction business, I used to wear these big heels to feel powerful and important and have some power. But what matters to me actually is moreover about being connected and authentic, and that's ultimately, we're going to talk about that today, and the difference between being successful and feeling success, and the fire within. And so I'm going to tell you a bit about my story, and then hopefully we write your next chapter. So this is my family. This is a beautiful illustration that I drew when I was about 6 years old. My mom and dad, myself, and my annoying redheaded brother, who remains that to this day. Smart and lovely, but still that. And if you notice something about this picture that's a little bit different, you can raise your hand if you have one of those intelligence metrics, right? One guy got it. Good job, everyone. It's that there are two sons in this picture. And I drafted this picture for my Mother's Day gift to my mom, and when I gave it to the lady who tended me at that time, she said, "Kelsey, you're going to have to redo this picture. It's not right. There aren't two sons." And so my little heart broke, and I walked away sheepishly, and then halfway across the room, I thought, well, piss on that. I love this picture. It's just extra sunny. And I knew my market. I've been an entrepreneur, forever, and I was like, this is my mother. She's going to like whatever. So here's me. I'm just exposing all my bad stuff to you. So this is me at age 9. I hope you can see the shadow cast by my home perm in that picture. And before Jennifer Aniston did it, I had the short long, also then referred to as the mullet. And then at age 11, I shaved half of my head off and had this other long piece, and that's about when my dad stopped walking beside me anywhere we went. But I show this to illustrate that I really have never been in the normal category of things, which ultimately has turned out to be okay for me. But at the time, it was tricky, and we're going to talk a little bit about those stages where we're not down the middle. This is me, not being down the middle. Ultimately, I grew up to start a construction company when I was 28 years old, and the reason that I keep being in Chatelaine Magazine and Profit Magazine, which has been a tremendous opportunity. But this is me at work doing what I did as a girl in construction, which didn't seem normal. And I remember the first time I went to the bank and the bonding company, I was 28 and probably in heels, much like that. And they said, "You want to do what? You want our money? Go and do something, and then maybe we'll do something for you." And ultimately, this is what turned of it. So this is what Chatelaine makes success look like, and that is what it really is. So anyone who reps Chatelaine, this is great. Thank you for doing that. It polishes up well, but this is really what we're talking about. And so for me, the spark to my fire started a long time ago, but it took me a really long time, like a tremendously long time, and a lot of struggles and hurdles to get there. And that's the piece I really wanted to connect with you about today. So here's the picture with the two sons. And then sometime in about grade 10, when I was listening in class, they had said, the sun is just a star, and that there are a bazillion stars in the sky. And it took me right back to this picture, and that this is really what I could have drawn. And the notion that possibility existed beyond what you're told, that how that centerpiece, the defined path, let's call it, is just one notion. And that was the spark, that very moment I remember the class, Mr. Kresnicki, and this happened to me. And from that very second on, I no longer felt ashamed or guilty about all these haircuts and my dad not walking beside me and being kind of the weird kid. I thought this might be my thing. So there is a difference between being successful and feeling successful. I've had both. I'm very clear on what that is, and we're going to talk about that. I'm going to walk through failure, risk, cancer, and balance, the ultimate work-life balance story, and truth, trust, and authenticity. This is one of my favorite quotes. If you want a happy ending, that depends, of course, on where you stop your story. And so I think anyone who knows me would tell you there's a lot of places in my story where you could stop and think, oh my God, are we going to have to pay her rent forever? Or, let's let's do an intervention with Kelsey because there is something wrong with her. But ultimately, my story, real inflection point for me was around when I applied for my MBA program. I'd gone to school. I was a scholastic failure. I barely graduated high school. I actually negotiated my way into passing. I went to my principal and I said, okay, I need a 49 on my physics exam. I am your star rugby player. If I get that, I will graduate high school. And so sure enough, when my exams came back, I got a 49 in physics. Thank you very much. And then I went on for my undergrad, and I was on and off academic probation, and actually, again, had to negotiate my way into undergrad. I went down to the University of Victoria in my car from Kelowna, BC, and showed up there and went, to the desk and said, hi, I'd like to speak to the registrar. Not recognizing that's like a panel of people who let you into university, which just first gave them the first clue that I wasn't that smart. But I said, let me pay you for this whole year of tuition in advance, and then if I flunk out, hey, good deal for you. And so I did really well in the first semester and then failed, and then I did that for a while. And so my permanent record is not that positive. So when I went to apply to MBA school, I applied to all 13 MBA schools across Canada. And I'm about to offend the people from Saskatchewan. I love your province, but the worst MBA school in Saskatchewan did not accept me. So I got 12 skinny little "you're not good enough" envelopes. And then one day, I got one big, fat, heavy envelope, and it was from Western. And at that time, that was the #1 MBA program in the country. And I thought, oh, great, these guys have made a mistake. So I drove as quickly as I could to the bank, and I wire transferred the money. And I thought, if these people are business people, they will cash it. By the time they realize they've screwed up, I am in like Flynn. And but later, so I got in, I went to school, and later, I met the woman who actually let me in, and she said, I remember your application. You're Kelsey Kitch, formerly Kelsey Kitch. And she said it was on the top of the no pile when I walked into the admissions room, and it was bizarre. It was like colorful, and there was a drawing on it, and so I couldn't help but read it. And I said to the people, you know what? If someone else doesn't accept their seat in the last moments when we couldn't get anyone else to come, call this girl. I think she could do something. And she was right. And I'm so grateful to that one woman who took my truth, because that's what I did. I thought, if this is a Hail Mary, I'm just going to throw the truth at it and be as candid and honest. This is me. This is who I am, good, bad, and indifferent. And that is what opened the door to this kind of future. And so the first piece was truth. And that took me to this, which is when we fail. And when people say when we're risky, when people say entrepreneurs are risk tolerant, I like to tell them about the entrepreneurial theory of relativity, which is when I started my construction company, I was just out of my MBA. I had $112,700 of debt, precisely. And the first job I had was for $1,200. It was to remove a dirt bike ramp that someone had built in front of this person's ranch. So the night before, and I was going to make $250 on this job. The night before, I could not sleep. I stayed awake all night because I forgot to measure the distance between the two posts to enter and whether or not the excavator I had ordered would fit through it. And I was like, oh my God, oh my gosh. And the rental on the drop-off is $250 an hour. I'm going to not make money. And as it turns out, yeah, it showed up. It fit through. It was fine. Flash forward to 3 years later, and I'm in my lawyer's office. And I'm signing my first $1 million check. Loan, not to me. And my body started shaking again. It was the exact same feeling that I had over $250 3 years before. And I reached over and I was sick in his waste paper basket. And he looked at me, big doe-eyed, and that was risk. And the thing that I've come to understand is that we can spend so much time looking at what everyone else is doing and thinking, that they're tolerant of risk. That's just what it is, but that's not it. What it is they have trust. I have trust in my ability to do something. Not always, but most of the time. And the bigger piece is about trusting the people around you who trust you back. Someone at the bank thought I could do it for $1 million, and I'm grateful that they did. And Here's another great example of trust. So I like to show this picture because a lot of people, again, back to that, like the real work and the me on the cover of Chatelaine magazine, you know, there's all this success and all this stuff that people talk about. We refer to ourselves against those models, but this is like, I'm obviously not a blonde, you know, and I don't look like this. Yeah, this is like a moment in time. Later today, I'll probably have like some random kid peanut butter on me and maybe pee on my shoe for my toilet training 2-year-old. But this is kind of the level of trust that it takes to build things. And I was talking earlier to someone about the fact that every single human transaction is fundamentally based on trust first. It doesn't matter what you're selling, what you're buying, what you're pitching, who you're falling in love with, who you're breaking up with, it's trust. And that recognizing that is really what got me through the next thing, which is I was having tremendous success. So I think I'd had my first like $15 million year or something. We just had Sam, who's our third child, and then I was diagnosed with cancer. And I thought I was doing pretty well. You know, I was flying high with money and all that great family, and then that changed for me. And what happened is I rocked on my kitchen floor crying for a while, like not when anyone else was around to start with, but ultimately I did it when people were around. The type of cancer that I had is doesn't respond to chemo or radiation. There were about 30 known cases in the world at that time, and there's 31 now. And they have all my little cells stashed away to study, which is great. And the good thing about having a super rare, highly deadly form of cancer is that it makes all of the nerdy scientist people very interested. So I had great care. So people were flying in from around the world trying to figure out how to save my life. And ultimately, I in one of those kind of rocky on the floor moments, I decided that being the type A person I was, no one was going to write my eulogy as well as I would. So I'd better take care of that for them. And so I wrote my eulogy, and it occurred to me in writing that this exact same thing happened. I was as vulnerable as I could get. You know, everything was uncertain. Everything was a risk. And I was so rawly emotionally exposed, and that's not, to that point, was not my style. I was all about like, bring it together, put on the heels, strong face, construction girl, you know, really a different self. And then I thought, you know, what if I live 5 more years? What if I just had 5 more years? And I wrote another eulogy. And I thought, my God, this is it. I need to be living my eulogy every day. This is the thing. The outcome of that vulnerability for me was such deep, authentic connection, not just to myself, but to every moment of my life and all the people around me. And that piece around being authentic in all those places was the huge shift from being successful, covers of magazines and money and all that stuff, to feeling it, to really waking up with a why, having the fire start again. I have worser news for you than cancer. There is no work-life balance. This is a bad verdict, isn't it? But the truth about work-life balance is really, there is no moment where the sky's open and there's like that nirvanic, your email box is empty and like, I don't know, whatever, your house is in order and no one's calling you with their problems, and having the failures and the risk and the cancer and everything coming together, I realized that my whole life had been about trying to control all this external stuff, like putting super high expectations on every single moment, and that I thought that I would get balanced in this high level of productivity and external success. But what I realized was that the balance came from me. That shit is gonna happen, man, and it happens daily, momentarily, like it's happened already today. It just happens. And that the only balance comes from you being centered in that thing that you're doing. And that the pivotal pieces of that are those 3 things I talked about. It's about the truth and the trust and the authenticity. So, in my experience, going through what's been a crazy roller coaster of a life where there's no good reason I'm here, you know? I just have been able to exercise on some opportunities and been handed lots of like rock sandwiches that I chewed through. And that's the piece, is like people talk about that it's the people who get up afterwards. It's authentic connection to people. And so the things that fuel the fire really are in the truth and failure. And that converts a failure into something entirely different. That when you're in your most courageous place, that someone is trusting in you. Hopefully it's you. And that you're living your obituary every day, whatever that looks like. And that authentic connection to that is the strongest pillar in finding the balance and the difference between feeling successful and just being successful. You can go down the middle of the road and be successful. Like that's mathematics. I'm great at math. That's my skill. You know, there's a path. Thousands of people tread it. But if you want to feel it when you get there, that's a whole nother thing.